Hi, Theodora. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much for having me today.
Great. Nice to have you. Martin Paul, for some reason, he's not on the call, so we're trying to get in touch with him. However, we are going to continue anyway without him, and we will just ask you all the questions, and hopefully he will join us at some point.
Great, great. I'm sure he will.
Okay. So let me ask you, start out with this question. Before I ask you a single question on wireless radiation or 5G or anything related to it, you've been speaking very articulately about these issues for many years. You work at Environmental Health Trust with Deborah Davis, who's extremely scientific and articulate. So it's not like what I'm about to ask you is breaking brand new information out. This is out there. Its books are on it, articles. We've interviewed you. You've made very clear videos citing specific studies and the health risks and environmental risks. So this information exists, and it's not fluffy information. It's tight, clear data, scientific studies. You're up on the latest studies. So this information's out there. So what's happened when you've told the president of the United States, the senators, the governors, the congressmen, or the PTA leaders, what the media, the New York Times, what are they saying? Are they all saying we don't care? It doesn't matter. We make a lot of money doing things the way we do it, and we just do not want to change. I mean, what is going on? Because you're saying really strong things that are affecting our health, affecting the environment. Who is listening and who's not listening? What is going on?
Well, that's a very good question. And there is a real gap in accountability. So when we go to our local officials, they'll say, oh, our hands are tied. We have to put this cell tower up, and the US government has regulations. Go to the feds, right? So when we go to the federal officials, and that happens when we go to the state officials too. I mean, everyone just points fingers at everyone else, but we end up at the federal government. And the situation we have there is that the federal agency tasked to be addressing this issue, the Federal Communications Commission, is captured. And former Verizon and industry telecom executives have been in leadership for years, and they have set the stage for where we are now with the billions of new things for the Internet of Things and all of these millions of new cell towers. But the real issue here is that the FCC is not a health and safety agency. So they say, well, we look to our health and safety partners, our other agencies, but actually no other agencies. And this is just a fact. This is not an opinion. I'm not going to give you a scientific opinion. I'm telling you a straight up fact. There is no agency of the US government with expertise in science or public health expertise, physical health, biological health, any regulatory agency with expertise in our health that has looked at the totality of the science and asked the simple question that we all have, which is this safe? What does the science say? Are the limits we have protective? And actually, there's no agency that's even tasked to be monitoring the levels that we're exposed to from cell towers. None. Other countries have, they're monitoring what are the levels, some not as good as others. In other countries, there might be a group that's tasked to be sort of looking at this, even if it's not adequately doing it, at least there is funding and a budget to do so. But in the United States, it's just been finger pointing, and actually there's no agency that has our back. It's like we've gone to a doctor and the doctor says, you're fine. And they never even looked at the situation. They didn't do any tests. They didn't assess. There's been no assessment of all of the science. And there's a lot of science.
Now, there are a lot of people in this world, there are billionaires who they don't want to get a disease. They don't want to get sick. So when very powerful, rich people who they have an interest in staying healthy also, they don't want their children to be sick. So are any of these influential, smart, powerful, rich people hearing this? Because it's not like you can invest in a telecom company and just get the benefits. if there is a health risk from wireless radiation or 5G, and it doesn't matter how successful you are, you're still gonna be affected by this. So any rational person, no matter where they live in the planet or how successful, this affects them. So are they understanding that, or do they not believe it? And why wouldn't people who've already got a lot going for them and a lot of money also want to protect themselves from something that could hurt their health? Do they just not believe it?
You know, I guess I can't answer that question. I can't say when I've talked to a lot of people in high positions of power over the years, they inevitably say things like, let me tell you about how my child uses the device. And they want to know from me how to help them for their kids. This has happened more times than I can count with people. And so they're sort of interested in this. I'm talking about elected officials now, or people who are in the departments of health and so forth. But getting that next step, I don't know how people sleep at night in light of the reality of our use of technology and the lack of proper safety limits. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of money. There's so much money here that money just must be making us blind. And as a society, we're addicted. People are addicted to this technology. And the other thing I think that's a reason why we're where we are, aside from money, which is probably one of the most important pieces, is a lack of hope that there's anything different. That, this feeling that it's overwhelming, it's not fixable, I can't do anything about this. People feel like they've been run over by a truck. I believe and know, and many scientists and people who are working on this believe that there are solutions. I mean, we know there are solutions, that we can fix this, just like we fixed other issues in the past. And there's a lot to be done, but it is a fixable situation once people have the information and once we have the political will to make the changes that need to be made.
Theodora, why do you say the FCC is a captured agency? After all, it's the United States government. The top people pick the leaders of the FCC. So these, in theory, are the smartest, most responsible, most honest people who love and care about us and our children and only want to make rules that protect us. So why would you have an opinion that they're not these wonderful people looking after our best interests? That's what my mother told me, my father told me, that's what most people believe, and we assume that the EPA is also, and of course the FDA and the USDA. So why would you accuse a government agency that we've been brought up to believe is the ultimate in looking out for us and say that they're captured? What do you mean by that?
Well, Harvard investigation, they have a publication, a Harvard Press investigator did a book called Captured Agency, all about the FCC. And that was detailing the fact that the former head of the top lobbying group of the wireless industry, it's called the CTIA, the wireless industry, CTIA wireless industry is their title. The former head lobbyist, the former head, Tom Wheeler, was appointed as the chair of the FCC and really put forward the regulations and the rules that we're dealing with now, which is the streamlining of cell towers and wireless everything into our lives. So the FCC, a lot of people who are who have been commissioners at the FCC then leave and go on to head wireless companies or wireless lobby groups. We have lawyers who worked in the FCC who then left and now are working for law firms that are representing the telecom company. And I mean in cases like right to know cases, or cases where there's lawsuits related to cell phone injuries and so forth. So in addition, the Brendan Carr, who is an example, he's now an FCC commissioner, and he was one of the lawyers who worked for the wireless industry, the CTIA, when the city of San Francisco tried to have a right to know law that would tell people that cell phones emit radiation. You should keep cell phones away from your body. And he was one of the lawyers who worked on that. And actually that law, which was voted on and passed, was never implemented because of the CTIA lawsuits. So the industry has been bullying the really communities that speak out or localities that try to pass laws. And the FCC has some leadership that has been involved in that.
So
Yeah.
who should we be voting for? Should we vote for Republicans or Democrats? Which one of them make sure to put people in office that put FCC chairmen that look out for our interests? Which one, the Democrats or the Republicans?
You know, with this issue, it's not a partisan issue. We've had Democrats who've, we had President Clinton appointed Thomas Wheeler. President Obama appointed Thomas Wheeler. And we've had Ajit Pai, who was chair under Trump. So this is not a partisan issue. And I can't answer that question. I think this is a all hands on deck. We got to get everyone involved and everyone educated on this issue, because it has not fallen through the cracks. It's just been, there's so much money captured at every level in every Republican, Democrat. It's made no difference into what's happened here so far. Now, I will also add that I didn't mention this, that the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, was fully defunded from working on this issue, but their websites make it seem like everything's fine. And if you go to their websites and read what they say, I think most people will say, well, they're pointing me to the FCC. All of that was drafted, rewritten just a few years ago. Since I've been involved in this, we monitor the web pages of our US federal agencies. The EPA site has been rewritten several times, just scrubbed and scrubbed again. The FDA as well, you go to the FDA site, it seems like safety is assured. In fact, there's a whole section on safety. The word safety is all over the page, but nowhere have they actually assessed all of the science to ensure safety for people, especially children.
So if the government, neither the Republicans or Democrats, are properly representing my best interest, when I go to the media, I know that the Wall Street Journal and the New York Post and Fox are Republican, and the Washington Post and the New York Times are Democrat. So which side, the liberal side or the Republican side, is properly representing the best interest of the public when it comes to wireless? Which one of those is telling the truth and telling accurate information about the safety and issues with wireless radiation and 5G?
You know, the media is largely, the New York Times, for example, they put forward articles on 5G and the National Toxicology Program study that have unfactual facts in them, things that are stated as facts, which are simply not true. We have yet, there is every now and then local media may cover stories more accurately, but at the national level, we haven't seen the kind of reporting that needs to be seen. Dr. Davis has been on Sanjay Gupta, CNN several years ago. He's done several pieces on it. She's been on Tucker Carlson. There's been, there's every now and then you see articles that are published in the national platforms, but the full stories are not being told the way that they really need to be. There needs to be an honest conversation about what we know, what we don't know, and what we should do. We know enough. Our scientists would say we know more than enough to know that we need to take action on this. And adverse biological effects are confirmed. Do we know the full extent in each of these different endpoints? That remains to be seen, because our bodies will be the proof. The way that how do we determine what is an established harm at the top federal level, when does the WHO determine something actually causes cancer? Like with air pollution, it was like this many people have died of air pollution. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. Our bodies, we will be the statistics. Our children will be the statistics by which the final determination that it's conclusive by those authorities that people so respect. That's just inexcusable, because we know that it's not safe, and we know that there's harm at very, very low levels, much lower than the safety limits are set for.
And have you or Deborah tried calling up the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, the New York Times, and saying, I want to speak to a reporter. I want to explain to you very clearly that with a new study came out, and given it to them? Like, have you tried to tell them and they're ignoring you, or they don't believe it, or they say we're not allowed to publish it? Like, why is this not on the cover or in every paper? Why is this not being covered more or at all?
Well, someday when we do our tell-all book, we will tell the individual stories, because yes, we have talked to many reporters who have not published their stories. We have talked to reporters who've been working on stories, and then they get promoted or moved or doing something else, and that story never sees the light of day. I've talked to many, many reporters, and yes, we do call up papers. And I've had reporters who've actually called me crying, saying, I'm sorry, I can't do your story. That's just, yeah, all the time. And we've had some stories published. And if you're listening, go to Santa Fe, New Mexican. That was a great piece on the impacts of biolife. I mean, there are pieces that sometimes get out. Even the Wall Street Journal was doing some really good reporting a few years back. They haven't since then, but they were.
Okay. So when someone says, yeah, I don't know. I can't see wireless radiation. I can't taste it. I can't smell it. I've never heard of anyone dying from it. I can't take it that seriously. Are there what studies, how many studies have been done? How big have the studies been? How recent are they? What makes you so convinced that wireless radiation really is a health concern? I mean, is this like an occasional small study? Like what level of evidence are you and Deborah and the rest of your team looking at that's making you feel so certain that wireless radiation is an important issue when so much of the country is not making it a big deal?
So there is a paper published in The Lancet by Dr. David Carpenter and Pri Bandera that talks about the thousands of studies that have been published, because it really depends on what year we're talking about. I mean, the reality is that the existence of biological effects have been known for decades. Since in the Cold War, when Russia and the United States were developing, they were looking at radar, and there was a lot of research. In fact, the US had a robust research program under the EPA and other agencies looking at this issue. They know that it's been long known that there are biological effects. So depending on when you draw the line, I can give you a lot of numbers. You can go to the Bio Initiative, where Dr. Henry Lai has put together looking at, we often hear the majority of studies don't show harm. How many of you have heard that? Like, we all hear that, right? Well, what he did is he put together, okay, I looked at all of the studies. We have this many studies show effect, this many do not show effect. When you look at oxidative stress, for example, the majority of studies have shown an effect. And that's all in published papers that you can go to Environmental Health Trust at ehtrust.org. There's research on oxidative stress. There's research on cancer. We've long heard about, don't put that phone to your head. It might cause cancer. A lot of people come up to me and say, my mom always said, don't put your head near that microwave. Don't stick your face up to the microwave window when I'm at fairs and so forth. Well, actually, there is a quite a robust amount of science looking at cancer and cell phone use.
Cindy. Bye-bye.
There's science that has looked at exposing animals, rodents, with the National Toxicology Program, and that study found clear evidence of cancer in the male rats. They found DNA damage in both rats and the mice. And then the Italian Ramazzini Institute, which has done a lot of studies on aspartame and vinyl chloride and a lot of the other toxic, environmental toxic exposures that we know about. And actually, they determined this even before the US government acknowledged it, but they did a study looking at cell phone radiation, except they did it at cell tower. They wanted to simulate cell tower exposures, and they found the same tumors that the US government National Toxicology Program found, $30 million study, same tumors. So there's all case control studies that are independent that have looked at people. When they've looked at people over 10 years of use, heavy use, have found associations with brain tumors. Gosh, a recent study just came out with the American Cancer Society that the American Cancer Society funded. You won't find it on their website, but it was funded by the American Cancer Society at Yale. And they looked at people with a genetic disposition and found that they developed more thyroid cancer if they had this certain genetic marker, which is actually quite common. So there are many scientists who have published in the peer-reviewed literature stating that wireless radiation is a proven human carcinogen. There are many scientists who say wireless radiation is probably a human carcinogen. And then there are scientists that are saying it's not established, and many of them have long industry ties, long held industry ties, which you might not see right now, but if you dig in their history, it's there. And of course, many scientists go on to consult with the wireless industry after they've left. So there's a lot of, I mean, I could talk forever about the science if you want me to keep going on that, but there's no lack of science, and you can go to Environmental Health Trust and read more about this. Impacts to sleep, impacts to memory, replicated studies on impacts to memory. And that was after 1 year of use. Teenagers who use cell phones for 1 year and put the phone to their head.
Tech team, can you put the Environmental Health Trust on our screen just so we could look at that, so we can talk about that for a moment with it on the screen? So do you have on Environmental Health Trust, there are studies that people can go to if they want?
Sure, and I'll put a link. I just put a link to our court decision, and I'll put a link to research, some of the top recent studies that have been published. Now, as an example of what's going on, there are also studies that are published that seem to show no harm. There was just a study published making the news all over out of a UK million woman study that says, the headlines read, "No link found with cell phones and cancer." Only that, I gotta fix my screen here. Only that study actually only didn't assess the hours of use that people used, that these women use cell phones. And it had what we would call a very crude exposure assessment. And we actually wrote one of the scientists, because a scientist was quoted who published this study as saying, well, as long as you use phones in a usual way, we don't see a risk. So we said, well, what does usual mean? And I can read to you exactly what she said, which I will be talking about in my talk tomorrow, actually. She said, the participants in this study were not particularly heavy users of mobile phones. Only 18% reported talking on a mobile phone for 30 minutes or more each week. Let me repeat that. 30 minutes or more each week. As such, we are unable to assess the risks associated with considerably greater levels of exposure. So this study that showed no link to cancer couldn't assess for people who used considerably more than 30 minutes a week. And you think about lawyers, real estate agents, you know, me as a mom, like I was on the phone all the time with that phone to my head. I had that phone to my head for hours every day, chatting with my girlfriends all the time, completely unaware that it even emitted radiation. That it ever emitted radiation, much less that was going in my head. I mean, who knew that?
So on your website, where would we go to find studies? If after this call, someone says, I'd like to see proof, where on Environmental Health Trust? So first, the website is what? What's the website address?
ehtrust.org.
EHE, Environmental H Health Trust.org, ehtrust.org.
Yes, ehtrust.org. Take your cursor, go up to science, hover over science, and you see all that whole list there? So you can click on any of those to learn about different things like cell towers, magnetic fields, electromagnetic sensitivity, children's vulnerability, pregnancy. There's also side menus that'll come out. Take that cursor and hover over key issues too, so I can show you that. That's up top, next to the about on the main menu. And then for each of those, like under, that's breast cancer and cell phones, under 5G, if you hover there, you see facts, policy, science. So we have the science on 5G, action, resources. For each one of those, for Wi-Fi in schools, cell towers, sort of hang out with that menu for a while. We have a lot of information.
Okay.
Because this issue it's a big bucket issue. And it's quite challenging to figure out how to organize the information, I'll be honest. Because when we say, well, we'll just highlight one thing, then everyone says, well, what about smart meters? What about, you know, where do you have the section on cell towers? Where do you have the section on Earpods? Where do you have, and they want to know everything. So we have a lot in here. Hover over Get Educated, because I think people will be interested in that section too. And you see the first one is like how to reduce cell phone radiation. And then use safer technology is things you can do at home. We have podcasts. So if you're interested in this issue, we have a lot of our lectures as we just turn them into podcasts so people can listen to them. If you scroll down to technology facts with your cursor, and you see there how we have that whole list of things. We have cell phones, cell towers, iPads, laptops, video games, smart meters, cordless phones, baby monitors. We have information on, you know, Earpods, virtual reality, so you can learn about each one of those issues, some science, the fine print warnings, which I haven't even talked about. There's so much. So just kind of hang out on the site, and you can also scroll down on this page. Actually, what that links to, by the way, is her TED Talk, which is excellent, Dr. Davis's TED Talk. And then this next video is her talk at the University of Melbourne, which is a really nice overview on cell phone wireless radiation. And then down we have facts on 5G. I mean, it's a big bucket, but the simple fact is many hands make light work, and we have a lot of work to do. So we hope everyone will, you know, get involved in your community, because there's a lot going on in communities all around the United States. There are groups working on this in every state, and there's much to do and much to learn to do. And I can definitely say that if you're saying, oh my goodness, what do I do? You can unshare the screen unless there's
one thing more on the screen. If someone is saying, Theodora, I would love to help, I think it's great, but I'm so busy, I've got my own things. I really can't take time to devote to this issue. Could they instead make a donation of a monthly donation? Would that be help with that? Is there anything you can do with the money that would be, meaningful? Or do they like what would a donation do? What impact does it have? A lot of us feel donations, we don't really know what happens to it. Is it really anything happened from those donations?
Yes, we absolutely can use a donation for the following things. We're making small websites dedicated to each issue to really educate people directly. So we have information specific to parents, information specifically about 5G, information specifically about environmental impacts, and we're making content, downloadable resources geared towards these different groups. We also have legal issues that we're involved in at the federal level, which are really, this is really the way, one of the key things to address this issue is we go federal and we go grassroots. We have to educate people so that they can pressure their elected officials, and so we can have awareness and people can make changes in their life. But we have to address the federal accountability issues at the top. So we have some actions related to the FCC that we're taking. We have we just won a lawsuit or a legal action against the FCC for their safety standards, where you can share the screen as well, but for their safety standards. And now we're doing additional filings asking to hold them accountable, because what the court determined is that the FCC had not done a full review of the record before that. There was a lot of scientific evidence and tens of thousands of pages of documents that had been ignored by the FCC. But then we filed in November, and we just filed in March again, more information, and we're asking them to look at the totality of the science. Now, the FCC does not have to respond in any timely fashion. They could go years, actually. They could not even look at the latest science when they finally even respond. So we're holding them accountable. We also need to be holding accountable the Environmental Protection Agency, the FDA, and the other agencies. So we're looking at legal actions related to environmental review. And we educate policymakers. We meet with those elected officials that are supposed to be representing us, and we are really holding them accountable, showing them how they can no longer say our hands are tied, because that's what they are. That's what you'll hear when you work on this issue and meet with officials. And so we are starting to just take names and numbers. We've got all the information. We have letters from the FCC. We have the statements by the FDA, everyone pointing to someone else, and it's unacceptable. And our elected officials they have to act. They have to do something about this. And that takes a lot of work, actually. We also give talks, and we speak to physicians and doctors. We give lectures all over the world now. Used to be travel, now we do it by Zoom.
And what is, if people are feeling that their financial situation is not warranting them giving money away to people, and they really only can do a minimal amount, what's the minimal amount that people could give that would still be supportive and helpful to you?
Every dollar counts. I would say that. So if you can donate, it means so much, and every dollar counts. I mean, that's, crowdfunding. If everyone gave a few dollars, we would be in such a different position than where we are. So I'll thank you for bringing this up, but we absolutely, every dollar counts. And if you're, if you want to get organized, meet with a group or contact us or have a meeting in your community. We do things like people contact us and say, can you please come talk to my local environmental group? Can you talk to this local group of parents? or I have a cell tower going up. Can you come and talk to our community? So that would be so helpful as well. We have to start speaking about this, and every dollar goes to a good cause. We are a nonprofit, so we do not, there's no one making a profit. In fact, the amount of volunteer hours is quite astounding for our organization. I work all the time. We all work all the time.
So let's assume, though, that we say, you seem very nice, but you know what? It's just a pain in the neck. I'm not going to make a donation. I really just got other things. I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry. Let's assume environmental trust, just, no one else does, and you run out of money and you close up. Who will take who will do the work that you're doing? Like, assume you guys just go away, give up, say we've had enough and we're moving on. What are the other groups like you that are doing just as much work and will take this over and will be just as effective if you didn't have the financial support?
I don't know any groups that are doing what we're doing solely, actually. There are some groups that are involved in doing this along with other issues, but in terms of our focus on publishing research, because we publish. So our scientists and scientific advisors, and you can go to the website to learn more about our advisors, are scientists who publish. And they are some of the most eminent scientists working in the field of environmental health. And we educate policymakers and raise awareness. So I don't know who else is doing all of those things focused on wireless and 5G solely. That's where all, not completely all, because actually we do other environmental issues, and we sign on to efforts, and we support, work on lead and air pollution and toxins in children's toys and so forth, and other environmental health issues. But this is where we majority are working, actually. So Children's Health Defense does some issues on 5G and wireless radiation, and NRDC, the Natural Resources Defense Council, they put an amicus brief in our case, but they're not doing the everyday work that we're doing on this. So we hope that there will be more, that these groups will be doing more. There's Consumers for Safe Cell Phones as well. But I know that the time is going to come when there's going to be more organizations that are all working on this issue more focused, in a more focused fashion.
Could we put the Environmental Health Trust website up one more time? Just want to look at one more thing there with everyone. And can you click on the actual donate tab so I can look at that for a second? Thank you. Just see what it.
We also have a Patreon program where when we that you can go to. So we will record talks and do them live and send that to our patrons. So starting at, I think it's, starting at $2, some give $25 a month, some give $2, some give $50, some people give us even more than that. And then you can be on when we record with our experts. And then we also have a YouTube channel where we put everything so you can watch a lot of these presentations.
Okay, so everyone, just so you know, I don't have any kind of royalty arrangement with Environmental Health Trust. We have no financial arrangement with them, but the reason I'm talking about donating money to them is I'm just being selfish. I'm not even being nice. I'm just saying, for me, I want to live in a world where wireless radiation is not a health concern to me. And I'm concerned that if Theodora decides that she doesn't feel like doing this and that there's not enough people supporting her, and she says, no one seems to care, what's the point? Then we have no one fighting for us. So the fact that she has been willing to, take her personal time, and so has Deborah Davis, to fight for us, it's like two really, really incredibly smart people work for you full time, and they're not asking for much. So I'm just concerned that they might one day say, no one seems to care. I'll just, I'll watch Netflix. I'm not going to do this anymore. So we really do want to support them because there is a very tiny group of people fighting like crazy for us. And these people in their nonprofit are just doing everything they can. And they need our financial support and they need our emotional support. Like if you give a small amount, at least it lets them know that people care and are on their side. So I hope everyone will consider going to ehtrust.org and continue to support them on a regular basis, as if you think this is important stuff, they're fighting as well as anyone I could imagine. Okay.
Well,
So-
thank you so much.
You're welcome, and thank you for what you've been doing. Okay, so now let's assume someone goes, all right, I hear what you're saying, wireless radiation, you mean my cell phone, you mean my wireless router, you mean my wireless internet. What's this thing now I'm hearing about 5G? Is that different than wireless radiation? Do I need to be concerned about that? So what is this, all this stuff about 5G that I've been hearing about for several years, but maybe other people are not? What's different about regular wireless radiation than 5G, and why should I care about 5G?
So if you see 5G on your phone, this is not what I'm talking about for the most part. So if you bought the new 5G phone just recently, then it is about the 5G that I'm about to talk about. But when we talk about 5G, we're talking about 5th generation wireless. So when you first got phones, it was just voice, right? Then it was voice and texting. And then it became voice texting, and then there were pictures and more data. So each of those are generations. And now 5G is about, well, the industry promises super fast downloads, movies that move very quick to the phone. But it's also going to be tying together machine to machine. It's not just about the phones. There's machine communication, wireless networks that involve drones, all kinds of security networks that are in place, especially in cities and urban areas, self-driving cars, although self-driving cars do not have to have 5G to be working. So there's all these new wireless systems that industry is developing, trying out, testing on people, and they state that they need this new 5G infrastructure, which means that they claim that they need to put cell antennas, short cell towers, in front of our homes in our neighborhoods. Because before, with phones, the previous generations, you could have cell towers that were up high, rather far away. They weren't in neighborhoods, in residential neighborhoods. But now industry is saying, well, we need to put these 5G antennas in neighborhoods, in front of homes, 10, 20 feet in front of, your bedroom window. However, it's a little complicated, and the complexity is, so the industry sort of uses this talk of 5G, but really what they're putting in is 5G and 4G. They're putting all this new 4G right into our neighborhoods. 5G is going to use, these new wireless networks will use all the same frequencies that have been used in the past with 2G and 3G, actually. And then they're going to add in higher frequencies for some networks that have never been used publicly before, which are higher frequencies. And they're also going to elevate overall. So 5G will increase the ambient, the environmental levels of wireless radiation at various frequencies, low, mid, and high band, that we are exposed to, because you're going to have all of these new networks, all of these new antennas, and you're also going to have new smart things in your home and your environment. So it can be, we have on Environmental Health Trust a page on fine print warnings, and there's smart, oh my gosh, there's smart ovens, there's smart washing machines, there's the smart speaker, there's smart video things you chat with, there's all kinds of wireless devices, both in your home and then outside your home, that are elevating that level of wireless radiation. And wireless is radio frequency radiation, it's microwave radiation, and it has data traveling information. These are information carrying waves. So 5G is going to increase radiation, use a lot of different kinds of frequencies, put short cell towers in front of our homes without our say, by the way, stripping away our authority to say yes or no. And people are, many scientists, hundreds of scientists are calling to halt 5G because of the absolute lack of data on long-term safety. And by the way, those higher frequencies are going to interact differently with animals, and especially insects that are flying, birds, bees, because of the different size of the frequencies. There's research that's looked at impacts to insects and found that it can resonate with them and have unique effects. And it's a very high data rate as well. The pulsation, the modulation is different with 5G. So many things I could tell you about it, but it's kind of like more everything, more devices, more towers, and very, very serious, because you can't see it, but it's there, and there's going to be more of it.
And what's LTE and 6G, 7G, and 8G? Do these things, what are they? Do they exist yet?
Well, LTE is used for 4G. That is what they're increasing 4G antennas, as well as 5G, because 5G is going to use 4G as well. 4G is the backbone for 5G. So companies are saying, I need to put this cell tower in front of your house and take away your right to stop it. And we're going to be putting in these wireless facilities that have 4G antennas and 5G antennas. Now, 6G, 7G, those are the next generation. Actually, the wireless industry is already working on, and the FCC, or captured agency, is already slating frequencies that they're going to be using. Terahertz frequencies, even higher frequencies, never used in a massive scale among the public for those next generation technologies. They're just running real fast without taking time to, people's health has been completely trampled. There was no pre-market safety testing for when phones first came out. There's never pre-market safety testing for long-term exposure to this technology. It's not like a drug. If it were a drug, it'd be banned, because there's so many side effects that have been reported. But we're not monitoring. There's no monitoring going on of the levels. There's no monitoring going on of the side effects that are reported. I mean, is there any there's even no database for it. There's no post-market surveillance, to see what's happening. And people are reporting more and more effects. In fact, there was just some studies, I didn't talk about headaches, but researchers who are looking at headaches have been found time and time again. And a study just came out saying smartphones is a new cause of migraines. These researchers it's right there. It's the published literature, has everything you'd ever want to know. It's all there.
And how do we know if there's 5G in our area? How do I know if I'm being exposed to 5G?
Well, I can say that if you don't have 5G now, you will have it later in most areas, maybe not the very rural areas. One of the things we need is a way so that if you have that question, like, do I have 5G? I should be able to go online and find out, right? Like we have food labeling. Why don't we have labeling for what we're being exposed to? Because you can go to antenna search, antennasearch.com, I think it is, where you can type in your address and you can see where all the antennas are. But it actually doesn't have all of them now, especially in the era of 5G. It doesn't have, it has the macro towers, which are those big tall towers, but it doesn't have everything on it. Sometimes you have to go to your local municipality and ask them, where can I find the map of all the cell towers that you're allowing on county-owned land or city-owned land? Some communities have maps that you can go online and see, and then you can find the frequencies. But by and large, we're really not being informed about this information. If you live in New York City, or if you live in certain cities, they are turning on 5G and they are testing networks. But it's not fully in gear right now because not everyone is using the 5G network as it will be used in time. So we're really at the beginning of it. And I didn't mention this, but the European Parliament actually, their study service did a study. It's called the Health Effects of 5G. You can look it up, European Parliament, Health Effects of 5G. We have it right on our 5G facts page. And they concluded that the frequencies that will be used in 5G, that are the ones used in 2G and 3G, 4G, that they are probably carcinogenic and can affect fertility and possibly newborns. And that's the European Parliamentary Service, and they go through all of the science. So this is an all hands on deck situation. If you are listening and you want to get involved, find a local 5G group or a safe technology group in your community. And if you can contact us. You can go to Americans for Responsible Technology as well and find a group or start a group. But most states have groups at this point.
And if we go and buy a new phone, is there any way to turn off the 5G so that you don't connect by 5G? Or do you have to buy an old phone that doesn't connect? What do you do?
Yeah, so there is now, every phone is different. So I say what I'm about to say with that knowledge, and really they are different. So when you go to your phone settings, you will see a place where you can turn it on airplane mode. It'll have location, it'll have data, it might have hotspot, and it might have 5G, and you can turn them off in some phones. If I were going to buy a new phone, I would try to not get a 5G phone. And if I had to, for some reason, I would make sure before I bought it that you could turn off those antennas. In fact, a simple way to reduce, not completely make it safe, but reduce your exposure is to always turn off antennas you're not using, so that you're not having the radiation always being emanating. Because the thing about phones and wireless devices, which is so not smart, is that they are always radiating. They're always emitting wireless radiation, connecting even when you're not using them. And it's a real waste of energy as well. But some of that energy that's being wasted is going into your body. So the wireless radiation that's coming out of the phone goes into you.
When we talk about wireless radiation and 5G, I think, because you can't see it, taste it, smell it, no one ever says in the paper they died of wireless radiation. What kind of health issues are we talking about? I mean, are we still saying that this produces occasional rare things or minor things? Like, are you talking about this like as a serious health risk, like cigarettes, or is this more like a minor health risk? Like, I don't know if people know how seriously to take this. After all, there's a lot of risks in the world. So is this kind of like flying an airplane where, sure, occasionally something happens? Or is this something like cigarettes where it was a tremendous amount of people were affected? What does the science say about what are the health consequences or the suspected health consequences of this situation?
Well, very serious. This is very serious. I mean, what other environmental exposure has so rapidly, so quickly saturated every aspect of our life, even our youngest, even before we're born? So I guess the question, and sort of what moved me to be interested in this, was, well, how many IQ points do I want my children to lose? Because I started reading about damage to brain cells. So if there are animal studies where they've exposed animals to cell phone radiation and they've found damaged brain cells, there's studies that have found damaged memory after 1 year. What could be more important than our brain health? But that's only one piece. When we talk about oxidative stress and inflammation, what does that mean? That means that our bodies are not as resilient as they could be in a time when you will need to be really strong because of various, when you get sick and so forth. And what they found with oxidative stress is the very young and the very old are more vulnerable when you have more inflammation. So if you already have diabetes, you already have cancer, you already have all of these health issues that most people in the world who have comorbidities, which is so many people, who is perfectly healthy and has no health issue, right? So that can make you less resilient. Also, it's linked to a type of brain cancer, glioblastoma. Most people don't live more than 2 years. There's so many issues related to wireless radiation. And actually, if you say, well, we're exposed to all of these issues, we got plastics, we got, BPA, we got all these things, we're exposed to. Well, there's research that has shown that the synergistic effect can make it worse. So if you're exposed to a known carcinogen, add in wireless radiation or other types of non-ionizing radiation, and science has found a synergistic effect, which means the effect is worse when you have the toxic exposure plus the non-ionizing radiation exposure. So there's so many simple things we can do to decrease our exposure, and we've got to fix federal laws, but this is very serious. And that's why so many scientists are working all the time, raising awareness, publishing on this, signing appeals. Every year there's a new appeal. There's trying to get some movement on this because we have to fix it.
Would you say the simplest number one thing you could do is put your phone in airplane mode?
Yeah, I would say that's step one is don't put that phone to your head, put it on airplane mode more, learn how to reduce exposure to the phone. Absolutely. And start to look around your house. Step two is okay, what else can I do? What do you have that's wireless in your house? Start going around, taking a look at what you got and replacing what you can with wired options. Like I use a wired mouse. That was easy. I know my kids will say that they would never use a wired mouse. They would rather die than use a wired mouse. They use this little pad, they don't even use any mouse. But for those of you who have a mouse, and how about the telephone? So this is my telephone. And yes, if you have a copper line, you keep that copper line and make sure you get a phone with a curly cord. The next step is to, and this is much easier than it seems, but you can get a voice over IP or some kind of corded phone. The first step, of course, is unplug at night. Step one, airplane mode, decrease exposure to your phone. Step two is at night, unplug things that are emit radiation. Don't sleep with the cell phone near your head, and don't sleep with a cordless phone base near your head.
So this mouse that I have, I should immediately just get a corded mouse that goes to my Mac computer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Get a corded mouse. And we have I think we have up on EHT, we have a page on scientific imaging where engineers who we work with, they simulate the wireless radiation exposure and absorption into the body, and they have the absorption from the mouse. Even some of that is absorbed. Your keyboard, get a wired keyboard. Your printer. If you're not using your printer and it's wireless, please turn it off when you're not using it. A lot of them emit all the time. I know this might seem like, well, how often am I near a printer? Well, my dad had that printer literally next to his body. He had the computer desk. He had the printer right there. It was right there, just emanating all the time. Completely unnecessary. He probably printed once a month, right? So little things you can start to notice. What's wireless? First get a distance, move it away from your body. If you can put in wired, that's the best option, or unplug it when you're not using it.
And what if outside our house, the gas company or the water company says, no, we put in a new meter. It's the only meter we have. It's wireless. Is that in other words, I want to understand, in a perfect world, everything's wired. But if my gas meter, my water meter, the electric meter are somehow wirelessly connecting, the alarm in a house, any of these things, I don't know. I'm not, if you're 20 feet, well, start with the outside ones. Is this the gas meter, the water meter, the electric meter that are outside the house that are wireless? Is this, how big a concern is this? I mean,
it's a big concern. So, and there are different kinds of utility meters. So you'll have your electric meter is usually your biggest concern, because some of the other meters only are awakened when they're awakened when the truck goes by. It depends on what you have for water or for gas. And I can't say, every community is different. Some are pulsing all the time, but I can't speak on those. But let's talk about your electric meter. A few years ago, they started just switching. People didn't even know they were switching to these smart meters, certainly in our area. And they are pulsing all the time. They also create harmonics on your electrical system in your house, which emanate out of the cords that affect you and your health. So you want to get an analog meter if you can. You hold on to your meter if it hasn't been changed out to find out, do you have a smart meter? Hang on to your analog meter. Now, if you don't, if it's switched, see if you can put in an analog meter. They might only let you do a digital meter, which actually isn't the perfect solution. And they also charge you. So in my community, I had to pay $75, and I've moved 3 times and paid $75 every time to not have a wireless emitting smart meter. But then I pay, what is it, $14 every month. I mean, it's ridiculous. So if not in Maryland, unfortunately, but in other communities, they are actively trying to make laws so that you don't have to pay. It's extortion, right? Why are we paying for something we don't want, never wanted? The old meters worked great. They lasted for years, decades. These new meters last maybe 5 years. Technology changes, they swap them out. So get organized. You can find a smart meter group in your community. There's also Stop Smart Meters. Josh Hart's been working on this a long time. There's a lot of information on smart meters. There's also privacy issues. So this is a big issue, and there are a lot of lawsuits, some still happening in process related to this because so many people have been sick from the meters. Whatever, you also want to check in your bedroom. Is your bed up against the wall that has the smart meter on the other side? Some people have gotten sick because they're sleeping with their head to the meter, or to, in some cases, a bank of meters, because in apartment buildings or in condos, you might get a whole wall of those meters. So check what's on the other side of your wall. Move your bed to the other side of the room. If you can, move rooms, but definitely to the other side of the room. There's also magnetic fields that come off of utility meter. So you don't want to have your head near the utility meter. And someone brought in the chat up about electrical lines. So that's another kind of non-ionizing radiation. And research has continued to show links to childhood leukemia from power line frequency magnetic fields. So
as opposed to just feeling like this is out of control, if you buy an acoustimeter, does that tell me, does that tell me if I'm experiencing, so if I have an electric meter, a gas meter, a water meter, and the acoustimeter shows no reading, does that mean it's not affecting me? Am I pretty safe?
Good question. So this is an acoustimeter that you're talking about, and this is the levels in my house. That's really low. That's super low. And the problem with the meters that we have, I will say, is that a smart meter is a little different than other things in your home. So sometimes you'll see a spike on a consumer grade meter, even a high grade one. But if you have a building biologist or a an expert on this issue, they can really see what the smart meter is doing in a better way, actually, because the smart meters put out very short, intense pulses. And while my house has 0 here, I can tell you this: if I go outside, it goes up. I'm inside. I'm actually in the basement right now, and many people, when you go outside, you're going to get certain levels, and it's hard to see what's going on with the smart meter so much. But if it's a smart meter, it's emitting wireless radiation, period, full stop.
So if we say, okay, I'm going to put my cell phone on airplane mode or not use it at all, but we live in the real world and we're near people. If we're 20 feet away, 15 feet, well, if we're any distance, if we're away from a wireless router, away from a person with a cell phone, away from someone who's connecting wirelessly on their laptop, how away is comfortable and safe? Is 2 feet, 20 feet, 200 feet? In other words, I understand perfect would be to have none of this, but I want to be around people. And even if I don't have a cell phone or a laptop on or a wireless router on, I'm very often going to be around people that are 10 feet from me, 20 feet, 50 feet. How much is the exposure when I'm not that close, but I'm still within 20 feet?
Well, it's a very good question. However, I think of it like I think of like food. I mean, in a perfect world, we'd be eating perfect all the time. But then we find ourselves in situations, we're traveling or we're out or whatever the situation is. And it's, or there are financial constraints and so forth. So it's like that. I mean, everything you do makes a big difference. So if you start with nighttime in your house, we're going to go out in the world, and I can't tell you how many feet, because honestly, if you look at from a scientific viewpoint, it really all depends. So much depends on so many different factors. And I realize oh my gosh, I'm about to go out of power. I cannot even believe this. I forgot to bring my power cord down here.
Do you want to go get the power cord? We'll wait.
You know what? I might have to go get the power cord before this hangs up. I'll be right back.
When you go ahead right now and get it, we'll wait. We'll wait for you. Okay, so we're going to wait for Theodora to get a power cord, and she'll be back in a few minutes. She's just going to another room in her home to get the power cord. So thank you, everyone, for tuning into our conference. We've had some great speakers, and I really appreciate that all of you have taken your time to sit here and listen. These are very long, intense lectures, and if you can make it through a whole lecture, you're probably significantly more educated than 99% of the population on that subject after listening to one of these lectures. So I commend you for being willing to be open to this information and hearing it. And I think you will get significant benefit, because I believe these speakers, even though they don't all agree completely, are making a lot of points that are very clear and of great benefit to us. So thank you all for your support and being part of this conference. It's a very exciting conference to have it, and we're all excited to have all these speakers, and we appreciate that you're all here. Okay, you're back. That was good and quick.
Okay, sorry about that. You were asking how close, I mean, more is better, but it's really, this is why we have to fix federal law, so that we are not in a situation where, I go on the metro and everyone has a phone, and we're all in this metal encased place. And here I have a choice. I also have a car. There are many people who don't have that choice. So we have to fix federal law. And that's why at Environmental Health Trust, we're working at the federal level to fix that. I mean, now some people might have symptoms that you're unaware of, which might be related to all of the devices that you're exposed to: headaches, dizziness, rashes. So it's also about how you feel if you have symptoms of electrical sensitivity, which are becoming disabling. When you put the phone to your head, you get a headache. People come up to me and say, like I do a lot of, well, I haven't recently, but you do fairs where you're talking to different people who come up to your table and they say, my leg tingles when that phone is in my pocket. I've had people who I've talked to, and when they stopped putting that phone to that body part, it changed the pain that was there, or headaches that they had, as I talked about, from putting the phone to your head. Wi-Fi has a very irregular signal, and the Wi-Fi is a different kind of, it's all wireless. However, it has something which for some people, Wi-Fi is what triggers their headaches or their symptoms. So, and a lot of people had, gosh, one woman came up to me and the Wi-Fi router was in her daughter's bedroom, her young daughter's bedroom. She was in an apartment and that's where the Wi-Fi router was. She didn't know that it was emitting wireless radiation all the time. So you want to get your room, your bedroom cleaned up first. That's the easy first step.
What about wireless earpods that kids use to listen to music? They're in the gym and this way they have wireless earpods. What about them? How are they?
Throw them out. No, no wireless earpods. Those are devices which emit radiation, which are in the ears all the time. They actually, some of them work where one is attaching to another one, which is then attaching to the phone. So if you can get an air tube headset or use the phone on speaker, that is what is preferred.
Okay.
And these are in your ears all the time. Even if it's a low level, that's constant radiation.
And just one more thing, when we're in the car, is it even worse? Like if I'm going to be 3 feet from you and you have your cell phone on, or I'm going to be 3 feet from you in a car, is it worse to be 3 feet from you in a car than if we're just sitting outside at a bench?
Well, again, every exposure is different, but yes, it can be, because when you're in a car, there's a metal, and wireless radiation will reflect, bounce, act differently around metal. It can't get through the metal. So you can have elevated levels in a car, and the radiation can act in unexpected ways. So in a car, you want to have all devices off. Is the best thing to do.
When you travel,
other thing, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, when you're traveling in a car, your phone is actually connecting to each new cell tower in its service area. So as you're traveling, the phone is doing these handshakes, these digital handshakes to the new cell tower. And each time that's a peak of radiation. So you don't want to use a cell phone in a car for that reason as well, in addition to the metal.
When you travel and you get to the airport and you go through baggage check or baggage claim or whatever it is where they check you, and there's a device you have to walk through and people stand, they put their hands over their head and they spin around, and it's like a 3D check to make sure there's nothing on you. They also have an option to be hand patted instead. What do you do? Is that a big deal to avoid that thing where you twist around?
Well, I always get the hand pat. I've almost missed flights because of that hand pat. So I have to tell you that go early. But I get the hand pat because that is millimeter waves often. In fact, there was a kind that they were using before, which they no longer use really. That was, I think, even higher frequencies. But go early, get the hand pat, tell them early on. I wear like super comfortable clothes so they can just, there's nothing there that's going to make them. One time I wore jeans, and that's not good when they're doing the hand pat because they get all fussy around the zippers. But
okay, so let's assume that the country says we're going forward, 5G, 6G, we're building towers, and they just go forward. And now it's just every man and woman's got to protect themselves. So it's great. We're going to try to petition. We're going to try to do what we can. But if the things just march along, what are we going to do? Is there devices, are there products that I've seen some whole home devices. Some people said get shungite. What, from all your research and all the people telling you things, are there products to protect ourselves, our house, our bodies, our phones? Is there anything that at this point, any products you recommend, anything you could advise us on?
We don't recommend products, but we don't test them. We advocate for primary prevention, which would be fixing the problem. One things we are advocating for is that because we want the government to acknowledge this, or governments around the world, how do you even compare products? And there needs to be an acknowledgement that this is an issue, so that things can be compared and looked at. So, to what degree is something actually changing the wave, and what does that even mean? I mean, all of this needs to be properly tested, and we don't actually do that. So we don't have science on that. So we would recommend doing everything in your home as much as possible to reduce. You may need shielding if you live near a tower outside your window.
So you're not necessarily saying that all products are bad. You're saying this is not your focus to test the products. You don't really have an answer either way.
Right. And there's so many products I couldn't even, but it's just like a huge issue. I mean, can there be biological frequencies which are wireless, which are not as biologically active? I think some scientists are looking into that, not in a well-funded way by any means by our governments. And that's certainly something that I think companies really should be doing. But the first thing they should be doing is not exposing us to this, because also every person's different. So there are people who may not respond to certain kinds of frequencies, but may respond to other frequencies at very low levels. And people who are very sensitive, have found that, one person says, well, this thing works, and they say, this does not work at all. In fact, I feel worse. So, I can't speak either way. So we don't comment on those, actually. And I would be careful about a lot of them for sure, because there's just not enough research that's been done. So that's the challenge.
If someone says, great, I don't use a cordless phone, I'm totally with you. I just use my house. I don't use a cell phone. I just use my house cordless phone. Are they better off or the same?
I'm glad you asked that question. Home cordless phones emit wireless radiation, the same type radio frequency as cell phones. And in fact, the base, the cradle that the phone goes in, they emit all the time. They can be some of your highest levels that you're exposed to are from your cordless phone. I know it was for me. I had gotten this meter. I thought I had cleared everything out. I finally got the meter. I bit the bullet, and then I found out that my cordless phone right here next to my computer was emitting so much wireless radiation. So no, you don't want to use a cordless phone. And if you must use a cordless phone, turn it off when not in use, at least. And don't have that deck base anywhere where you sleep, where you are all the time.
And what about electric cars? In other words, is this any different than a regular car? Should I be concerned about wireless radiation in buying an electric car?
Well, that's a very good question. I would say there's smart things. So when we talk about wireless radiation, it's a kind of non-ionizing radiation. And the whole spectrum of non-ionizing radiation is considered not harmful by our government agencies, even though there's thousands of studies showing harm. So another kind of, there's radio frequency, which is wireless. And in your electric cars and your smart cars, there's wireless things and sensors. And there's also magnetic fields from the power, the electricity. So the battery is going to have these magnetic fields. And that's the research has been shown impacts to childhood cancer. There's studies on pregnant women. There's studies on oxidative stress and all kinds of research that has found adverse effects at low levels. Those have been published studies. The US government has no limit on exposure. So for cars, they're not violating any rules because there are no rules. So there's no rules to violate when it comes to magnetic fields from the batteries in electric cars. But if you go, you can actually get, did I bring? Yeah. Well, you can get a little meter for magnetic fields. There's a variety of meters you can use, and you can see the levels in the car. And if you're putting a car seat in, or your child is regularly sitting, have them sit on the side that doesn't have as high levels. In general, car manufacturers are aware that this is an issue. There's many published studies where they talk about magnetic fields in cars and best practices and how to begin to lower levels, but we're really at the beginning of that. Cars came out, electric cars came out, and now they're starting to try to figure some of that out. Many people have gotten sick after getting an electric car, a smart car. So a lot of work needs to be done there. I cannot recommend any specific models. I talk to people all the time about this. People write me and they send me all these models they looked at. They got all the meters. They're trying to figure out what to do. It's a real problem. And car manufacturers need to hear from you. Write them.
And if you were going to buy a car now, would you personally buy an electric car?
It's as we move towards energy efficiency, we need to have hand in hand work on ensuring it is safe for the public in terms of electromagnetic fields. I haven't even talked about motors, and I probably won't on this meeting, but there's a lot of things where you can, in an attempt to conserve energy or to use cleaner energy, we're actually moving into things that can have other unintended consequences from the electromagnetic field. So in a car, I'm hanging on to my car right now. We're looking and trying to see what to do ourselves, but it's a real challenge, actually. So I'm really struggling with this issue.
Where would you recommend, do you have a place you recommend people get all their different meters from if they want to get meters to measure any of these fields?
Safe Living Technologies. And did I bring my second meter to show you I didn't, it's in my purse. Safe Living Technologies is a great company that we have partnered with as well. And we have a page on our website. I'm going to put a link with recommended products. Because we also have, I'm putting it in right now, it's under the Get Educated tab. So we have links to meters, and we have a referral code, EHTO5, to get 5% off, and that also gives a donation to Environmental Health Trust. And I really recommend getting a meter if you're interested in this issue, because then you can go around your house and see what you're exposed to. Oh, you found the page. Okay. We also have ways that you see there, that's the Safe and Sound Pro meter, which is a great meter that we have. And it also can get you some additional information. So there's the acoustometer, there's the Safe and Sound meter, there's magnetic field meters. So important to know what you're dealing with. And if you're really serious about making changes in your house, you want to have a meter, because then you can see if you really accomplished what you set out to do. So you may think you've turned something off when actually it's still on. This happens like all the time. Or there's things in your home you didn't even know were emitting. I went over a friend's house. She's had me over every time, and I hadn't brought my meter over in years, actually, since I last kind of cleaned out the house. And it was just, and she said, come over and bring your meter, Theodora. She's got 2 kids. Well, actually, I'm sorry, 3. And we go into her living room, and it is beeping like crazy. And it was the video game console. That video game console that they were not even using was emitting because it was plugged in all the time. And she was like, oh, I wish I'd known that. So some things you have to actually unplug in order to stop them from emitting like mini video game consoles.
Tech team, could you click on that Safe Living Technologies website for a second? Deborah, they're selling a product I see right here that you wear on your wrist at Safe Living Technologies.
Mm-hmm.
That you wear on your wrist. Is that a good idea? So it tells you all the time whether or not you are exposed to radiation.
That's a new product that they just got. It's called like the micro RF detector,
Yeah.
and it goes off an alarm. It's especially helpful if you're sensitive, because you can sort of know when you're in a situation that you know will affect you. Yeah.
Does it give off some kind of EMF itself though, that you're wearing it all the time?
No, it's only I'm sure it has a small battery in it. It's not a wireless device.
Okay, so this is something that would you buy this for yourself?
Me, I think I would be very interested in something like that. It's brand new. Yeah, anything that can help. What I want is something that I can put on the home, so when people walk in the house, it goes off when they come in with all these devices. Sometimes I'm plucking, you know, the smartwatch, the this, the that from my kids' friends. When they come over, I have no wireless devices in the home, or only if it's, you know, urgent. I also have a way they can plug their phone in. By the way, you can plug your phone into an Ethernet. I didn't mention this, but you can plug your phone into an Ethernet so it doesn't need to use the wireless radiation. So here's some other things that they have. They have this Swiss Shield. They have some more complicated paints and things. I do recommend that you have a building biologist for shielding, so that you can ensure that what you're doing is actually doing what you intend it to do. Because sometimes, like if you just paint your house with paint, you may not realize that there's something coming in from somewhere else that's being reflected or bounced back. So it's really important to have an expert do measurements if you are going to do some sorts of shielding. There's bed canopies that some people use around the bed. You have to make sure that you're not having anything coming from underneath if you're in an apartment. And any shielding, I just want to caution, just if you do shielding, do get an expert to come in and do measurements and help you with that. But there's so much you can do without, just by swapping out, replacing, and you can decrease your levels significantly. But if you're in an urban area, or if you have a cell tower, you know, nearby, you want to get accurate measurements so you can verify, measure and verify if you've made changes.
Now, is wireless radiation and 5G have any impact on climate change?
Oh, great. I'm glad you're bringing that up. I didn't mention that. So with all of these new devices and all of these new cell towers, the research has shown that it's going to increase energy use. In fact, 5G small cells use a lot of energy. And if you imagine that you're going to have, I think estimates are 800,000 wireless facilities for 5G in the United States alone. That is a lot more energy just for those base stations. But then you have all these devices. Remember, every device we use, what do we do with it at night? We charge it. So all these new things that are being charged, that are plugged in, are all going to use energy. And you imagine wireless uses more energy than wired. Ethernet, which is, I have an Ethernet cord here, uses the least energy. Like for streaming, there's been research where they've looked at, if you stream a movie, how much energy is being used? You use Ethernet. It is the conserve energy, cost less too for you and your electricity bill. And with wireless, it's spraying out everywhere. The energy's spraying out everywhere. Some of it goes into your body. Some of it's going to its intended place, but that's just wasted energy. So wired uses much less energy. And the other way that 5G is going to impact climate is, of course, impact to trees, because they're having all of these new antennas in front of homes and residential areas is going to impact the tree canopy. Both there's going to be digging, there's going to be trimming. In many communities, there's awareness being raised on this. However, in others, not necessarily. And there's going to be this who's watching the trimming of the trees? Plus, there's research that shows that trees are harmed by wireless radiation from base station antennas. And of course, trees are very important for climate because they protect in terms of the heat. And of course, you don't want a heat island, which is what's happening more and more as we cut down trees and we have more cement. There's research on impacts to plants, trees. There's a 3-part series on impacts to wildlife, where researchers are calling for urgently calling for regulations to protect wildlife and our flora and fauna.
Is there, there's people that talk about grounding, that if you're barefoot standing on the grass, making a cell phone call, that somehow you have significantly more protection because somehow there's some protection from that. Do you have any thought on that? Is that true, that you are grounded more? And I don't know why it works, why they're saying it works, but is there some recommendation that we're better off being standing barefoot on the grass than talking in our house on a cell phone?
Well, when you're out and many people talk about going into the ocean and you're barefoot in the water, it's grounding, you're getting that electricity out of your body. I know that grounding is actually very important in terms of your technology. You want to, like my laptop has a 3-prong on it, which I had to get an extra piece to make it a 3-prong when I plug it in to have it be grounded. So, because if not, then some of that electricity is going into my body. And I can't speak too much on the grounding from a technical perspective past them, because I've had many people come to my house and measure, and there are some issues that you want to make sure that you don't have other electrical issues in your ground, because the ground is used to ground, and that can come up with grounding. So, but I know that walking with bare feet would allow that to move through you, and we're always wearing shoes and not even doing that anymore. So there are many devices for grounding. I can't speak to them again because of the issue of the ground. And we're talking about grounding. I'm also talking about the ground. Actually, I'm sorry. But if you're in a very urban area, highly urban area, I would make sure that you have someone to come measure to make sure that your grounding that you're doing, if you're doing that, is actually not creating another issue. That's what I'm talking about. Because sometimes everyone else is sticking everything into the ground, which then can come back to you.
Are there other sources of radiation? Like, should we be concerned about flying in an airplane? Someone says that when you fly from New York to LA, it's the equivalent of several chest X-rays. Do you have any information on airplane flying and our exposure to radiation or anything negative?
Well, yeah, when you fly in an airplane, you're being exposed to, it actually depends on the flight and how high the flight up is, and if there's solar flares or other things going on in terms of ionizing radiation. But for non-ionizing radiation, there's more and more wireless in airplanes, not adequately tested for what that's doing, not just to the passengers, but to the workers, especially, who already are having more ionizing radiation. And now they're having non-ionizing radiation at sort of unprecedented levels as we put Wi-Fi in airplanes.
When someone in their house has an alarm that automatically connects by Wi-Fi, is that transmitting every second, every minute, every hour, once a day? Like, in other words, when you like, it's sort of the same question as the water meter and the gas meter and the electric meter, and also an alarm. Like, is an alarm in someone's house, does that, a fire or burglar alarm, does that connect? If it connects wirelessly, is it doing it? How frequently? Hourly, minute, every hour, every day? How often?
Well, actually, alarm systems are all very different. So I should say this. So if you've had a wireless alarm system for a very long time, it's possible it'll be like my alarm system that I had in my 3 houses ago house, which was actually not using, I think it was using infrared, and it was not emitting all the time. The newest systems, however, and that's why you want a meter to measure so that you can know what you're dealing with. But some of these new alarm systems and Nest, all the security hubs and so forth, they are emitting often all the time, the hub. So it really depends on the system. I'm going to have to tell you, you kind of want to get your meter and find out what's going on. These new doorbells that record everything, they are often emitting a lot, and there are the bases which are emitting more and constantly connecting to the little satellites that are on. And so I can't tell you how often, but for the newest ones, there's a lot of pulsing all the time.
In terms of kids in school today, they use laptops and there's wireless. So I don't know what's going on all over the country. I just know in my area that the norm is kids take notes on a laptop, or at least high school kids take notes on a laptop. It's connected wirelessly. Is there any thought on this?
We are working hard to address this issue in schools. This is an unprecedented amount of radiation in schools because you have all of these kids with devices, some on their laps. In high schools and middle schools, of course, they also have cell phones, which are emitting all the time. Those laptops are emitting Wi-Fi radiation constantly. And then there's also access points that are in the room on the ceiling that are also emitting wireless radiation constantly, even when the kids aren't on the laptops. And this is a situation that needs to be addressed. There are safer ways to do this. We wrote the Secretary of Education. We actually have a program where we're writing all the departments of health in every state, as well as all of the departments of education, and raising this issue, sharing with them how they can do it much, much safer. It does not have to be that the wireless is always on all the time. The kids don't always have to be on Wi-Fi also. There's so much that could be done if there again was political will to do so. They can use word processing where it's not always connected, or have kids connected with Ethernet like they do in many countries, where they're in many localities in other countries where the kids are all on wired internet instead of it being on wireless.
Whenever I go to the doctor or dentist, I think I'm the least liked person in the office, because what I do every time is I make a whole big deal about the x-rays. And everyone rolls their eyes at me, they yell at me, they tell me that you get more radiation from the sun. And I'm not really knowledgeable on it, so they might be right, but just intuitively, I'm not really that comfortable. What is the reality? When they do an x-ray of your back or your arm or your teeth, do you have any, is this a different subject than wireless radiation, or do you have any knowledge, like, are we supposed to, how concerned should we be about it? I mean, it seems like you might need this x-ray, dental x-ray sometimes. So any thoughts on medical and dental x-rays?
I'm not going to comment on medical and dental x-rays. I think that there needs to be a better job of addressing ionizing radiation in terms of medical procedures. We certainly know that with other ionizing, like CAT scans, that you want to do it only when medically necessary. And there's a time where and now they actually are saying, educating physicians on not always jumping on an imaging test unless it is medically necessary, because of some of what the science is showing around CAT scans, however many are happening you've had in your life. So you want to have what's medically necessary. I mean, when you're in the medical world, there's trade-offs, but I can't speak on that specifically, and I'm not an expert in that issue actually.
Okay. Are there meters to measure 5G?
Well, that's a good question too. So the Safe and Sound of the Safe Living Technologies, Safe and Sound, some of them are, the RF meter is sort of ready, not to all the, I'm not sure it's for all the frequencies, but there's not at this time a meter that is measuring some of the higher frequencies. So we really need to, and I know that they're working on that. That's really needed, because there are some much higher frequencies that I don't have a meter that measures myself.
So in the end, what will you do to protect yourself from 5G? Obviously, we want to make sure it's not in your area if you can, but if you somehow ended up living in a home and there were 5G antennas all over the place, what is the best thing you can do if they're near you?
It's sort of a both and. Clean up your house, learn all the things that you can do to make changes in your home. You may need to do shielding depending on your situation. If you do, get a building biologist and someone who is an electromagnetic expert to help you with that. I talked about addressing things in your home, but then I have to say, if you don't know who your elected officials are, like me, I did not know who my elected officials are, get to know who they are, because it has to be that we get involved in our local community. If you have cell towers all over, getting involved is going to help fix this. And there are many people who live in apartments who've actually been able to get it down to a level. So I would say, there's ways to address this in your home if you're in a very urban environment, but you do need to get some expertise, some help on that.
Okay, so for someone who just wants the super simple answers, if you were summing it all up, we're talking about wireless radiation and 5G, forgetting about the details of the science, just the action steps. Do you have the most basic review of the most important things that you've discussed tonight and the most important things we could do to protect ourselves? Without any further detail, just what is the specific things that you've mentioned tonight, and anything else that everyone should consider the non-negotiables, that if they want to protect themselves from wireless radiation, these are the basics that everyone would do to protect themselves and their family?
Okay, so you're just learning about the issue. Number one, your cell phone. Don't put the cell phone to your head. Don't tuck it in your bra. Don't put it in your pants. Don't put it in your spandex pants pocket. Keep it away from your body. It's emitting radiation. Learn how to use airplane mode. Turn antennas off, especially when you're not using them. Turn them all off. You make sure you turn off the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth. Don't use AirPods. If you have kids, you want to minimize your kids' exposure. Cell phones are not toys. Don't hand your child a cell phone in the grocery cart. Keep the phone away from the baby and toddlers. Limit children's use, except for emergencies. What do kids need it for? I mean, is it really helpful, all of what they're doing on it anyway? You want to reduce your secondhand exposure to kids as well, so and to yourself. So in your home, use wired technology. Use this is an adapter. You can plug the Ethernet into that and then plug in your laptop. Don't use cordless home phones. Instead, use a corded phone, which you can get with a voice over IP through your internet provider. You can also take your cell phone and actually plug it in with an Ethernet cord. And we have how to do that on our website, so that you can use your phone to do most of the things that your phone does, except for voice calls, unless you go through an internet application. And you don't have to be using the wireless in it. If you have video game consoles or Wi-Fi routers or printers, be aware that they are emitting radiation, and you can address those by getting printers. If it's a wireless printer, you can actually turn the Wi-Fi off of the printer in the settings section, and just turn that on when you need it, or use a wire instead. You can get wired internet in your home. So you want to choose corded, not wired connections overall for all your peripherals like mouse, speaker, especially speakers, keyboards. Don't use a smart speaker. That is emitting radiation all the time. Instead, you can use like we have computers. I have more computers than I even want to tell you at this point, because I have 2 kids and I have a husband, and we're all working out of the house at various points in time. And we use our computers wired. We don't need to use a wired speaker, a smart speaker, to do things. We use our computers, and we have speakers set up wired. Increase your distance from things that are emanating that you can't change. Oh, and be sure to opt out of smart meters. Get an analog meter. Get involved in a local group so that you can opt out if you're not able to in your community. And in your bedroom, clear out anything that's wireless from your bedroom. Don't sleep with your cell phone. Don't sleep with your head near a decked cordless phone base or a Wi-Fi router. Don't charge the phone near your bed. Get an alarm clock, because I'm sorry, a battery powered alarm clock that doesn't have a cord. Make sure there's no electrical cords running underneath your bed. Make sure your bed's not backed up to a wall that has utility meters on the other side, or a Wi-Fi router on the other side, or any kind of wireless device. The first step people do is often just turning that Wi-Fi off at night in their home. Turn it off at night. Then at least your body gets that 8 hours of sleep, and it can rest and heal during the nighttime. I could go on, but I think I hit a lot of the simple ones. The first, really, they're the big ones.
What do you do about your husband? In other words, my wife thinks that what I'm talking about makes sense, but she also wants to function in the world. And I sometimes take an extreme point of view, and sometimes I say, okay, I've heard that it's better to have no power going in the bedroom, so we should unplug the TV and the lamps and everything. And I think she wants to be healthy, and she also wants to live in the real world. She doesn't necessarily, I don't know if she or most people want to take as many steps as was suggesting. So what do you do when you're more concerned about this issue than the person you're with?
Yeah, I'm sort of in your boat. It's a negotiation, and I definitely have tried to make as many changes as I can in the home, the things that I can control, that I can swap out, so to make it as convenient as possible for these changes to occur. And my husband has a recording studio, and you know what? He hardwired the iPad. He went through a lot of trouble to get that set up. But not everything is perfect in our life or in this whole issue. I mean, it's really a challenge. It's just like with food or with anything else. And I'm just doing my best on that front. But I think having solutions is really important. And it takes a little time to learn these solutions. Like, it's easy to say, okay, I'm going to use my phone on speaker. That's like step one. Use the phone on speaker. Don't put it to your head. And that kind of came quick for my loved ones. But everything else is like, they got to know it. They got to hear it. And I have Ethernet adapters throughout the house so that it's not so hard to find one, so that they can plug in their phone, because a lot of people come with phones and want to do all the things people do on phones. And so I have that available. But really learn about the things you can do. Do the low-hanging fruit first. And you know what I tell, what really worked for many husbands, not just mine. I've only had one, but I know people say when they start talking about the impact to sperm, when people hear that it damages sperm, and research has shown it impacts the health of sperm. That can sort of, I find my girlfriend calls me up and says, my son, when he heard that, my college age son, he was like, you know what? I'm not going to put that phone in my pocket. Because I know we're all in that situation where we have people we love, our children, our grandchildren, and we're trying to educate them, and they just don't want to know or think about this. But little things, dropping things here and there, having the solutions, and being a respectful conversation. People will say to me, I don't believe you, and they get mad. Some people get irate about this issue. And there was a time when I was like very, well, I have to tell you all these 500 things. But now I just really stay calm, and I kind of go with the motto that people need to hear this over and over again in a calm way, feeling empowered. And eventually, I believe that they'll make the switch too, piece by piece. But we must continue to talk about it so that it stays top of mind, because it's completely invisible. So it's easy to just ignore it and pretend like it doesn't exist. Some people with their, whoever their loved one is, finding the thing that they care about and bringing that information to them. Because not everyone cares about their health, but they might care about climate, right? Or they might care about bees. Hey, I can talk to you about bees for forever and wireless radiation. There's research on all of this. So bring that's important, and also one step at a time, so that's what I would say. I can't hear you though. I think you're on
Hi,
mute.
sorry. Okay, if anyone would like to ask a question, please raise your hand and you can ask Theodora directly. So we look for questions, and please go to the reactions button if that's what you have in the bottom of your screen, and click the raise hand icon. Okay, Jonathan, where would you like to ask a question, and where are you from?
Yeah.
Sorry.
From South Brunswick, New Jersey, Steve, and it's great to see you, and I'm grateful that you're putting this conference on like usual. Tremendous kudos.
Thank you.
Theodora, I met you and spoke with you. I have a question. I just bought recently a smart TV, and I'm wondering, is there a certain distance I should sit away from it? With that, or does that emit a lot of radiation because it's a smart device?
Yeah, so good question. So I don't know what kind you have. In
It's a
some of
Samsung
them,
smart TV.
oh, Samsung. So actually, you can actually turn the wireless radiation off in the settings in
Really?
many models. If it's wired, so I don't know how it's connecting to whatever's giving it the signal. If it's connecting with, if you have it corded with an Ethernet,
Yes.
is that how you have it?
I have to go check, but I believe so.
Then you actually can, in many models, turn the wireless off. In general, we tell people who is going to stick with their TV, we say have as much distance as possible and unplug it when not in use.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was at someone's house. I was at my friend's house, and there was like 10 kids in front of the TV, and it was a new mom at the school, to me at the school, and they were all watching the TV, and they had it not through a wire. They had it connected wirelessly, and it kept having problems. The movie kept dropping out, and I'm like, plug it in, plug it in with the Ethernet or with the cable. So if you can connect it that way and run wires, that's even, you won't have a drop signal too.
So how do you shut it off? You just go to the settings and mode and
actually I can tell you this because we're getting all this information together and some good downloads. But let me just get you exactly how to do it.
I can check the site. Yeah.
So you ensure it's connected through the Ethernet cable or HDMI, because you can connect through HDMI. Go to menu, go to network settings, network type, and change it from wireless to wired. So you can use an HDMI cord too. And the way we watch movies at our house is I have the laptop connected to Ethernet. I plug it in with HDMI to either the large TV, screen, or we do a projector actually onto the
Oh.
wall. We just have like a little projector that I give my PowerPoint talks in, and we watch the movie that way.
Thank you very
So I
much.
can put this in the, I'm going to put this in the chat for you on the Samsung. And if I don't have it on our website, I will probably get that up by the end of the week. We might not have this particular thing on here. I just put it in the chat. I can't use bullets though, so it looks like a lot of words, but it's there.
Okay. Haley, would you like to ask a question, and where are you from?
Yes, I'm from Long Island, Syosset, Plainview. And first I want to say thank you so much for keeping this in the headlights, Steve. It's so important. And Theodora, the love you come from shines out through your eyes, and it's really beautiful. Thank you. My questions are several. A while back, Debbie Persampier had spoken about painting her children's bedroom to keep the radiation out. Do you know what kind of paint that was, and anything about, do you put that on top of the present paint or under it, or what?
Yeah, and I'm sure that she had some expertise in doing that and did measuring. So that's probably a kind of shielding paint where the wireless radiation can't go through it. And if you do have a space, like some people will do their bedrooms, and it can go right on top. But then of course you have to, it's black actually, unless they have new colors now, or they have colors, but it's, and then you cover that up. But you only want to do that if you have measuring done. And also you have to make sure that you have shielding all over. So on your windows as well, because it can come in through the windows. And if you do have a shielded room, don't bring your cell phone in it or have any wireless devices in that shielded room, because it becomes like a Faraday cage. It becomes like you're surrounded in metal almost. Some people also use, this is extra strength aluminum foil, which I had to use in a room in my home when I was in condos, and I had a wall and someone was on the other side of the wall with a Wi-Fi router, and like they probably had like a number of wireless devices there. But again, I measured, and that kept it from coming into my space.
Shashi,
Safe Living Technologies has that.
Shashi, would you like to ask a question, and where are you from?
I'm from New York, and my question is, do these electromagnetic radiations have effect on children? Little children are given these toys which are all so much, wireless connections. And in adults, are the neurodegenerative diseases related to excess exposure or use of these devices?
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up, because children are more vulnerable to wireless radiation. I'll start with children for several reasons. One, the wireless radiation penetrates deeper and more intensely into their bodies compared to an adult with the same device, up to 2 to 3 times into their brain, up to 10 times into the bone marrow of their skull. And also the radiation is can have more of an impact because they're younger, their brains are still developing. So as you know, the younger the brain, the more different impacts that can happen, and even later in life that you might not even be aware of, especially pregnancy as well. And the other thing I didn't mention was the eyes. Children's eyes are not fully developed, and just like their brains are not fully myelinated, their eyes are not fully developed. And there is not just wireless radiation, but the blue light, which can impact their underdeveloped eyes. It's not till they're in their 20s that they actually develop as much protection as adults do in terms of the blue light. So that said, there is research that shows impacts during pregnancy and to younger brains, which also are more conductive because there's more water in, there's actually more water in the brains of mammals that are younger. There has been recommendations by over a dozen governments that you should reduce wireless radiation to children. The American Academy of Pediatrics has recommendations on reducing cell phone radiation and keeping like iPads and all these devices that kids are using now off their bodies and on airplane mode. They talk about not streaming wirelessly, like you have a child who wants to watch a video. Don't give them the iPad or the cell phone to stream a video on. Have it be pre-downloaded on the device with the device on airplane mode. You can turn iPads on airplane mode, keep it on a table, use an Ethernet cord within a special adapter. There's research that showed damage to the brain, especially in animal studies. So I can give you a link. I'll put a link in the chat when he's asking the next question to find out more information on that. And I'm going to talk tomorrow morning, and I'll talk more about kids and show you imaging of children with various devices. This is what brought me into the issue, was kids and wireless and impacts to the brain. I think it's one of the most important issues related to this is the nervous system impacts.
Mandy, would you like to ask a question, or where are you from?
Hi, I'm from Long Island. I was just wondering about solar panels, if you other people asked that too in the chat. Solar panels on the top of your house.
Yeah, so I know that with solar panels, there's a few issues. One is that, and again, I'm in the Maryland area, so I don't know what's going on in your community, but in some communities you can't get a utility meter unless it's a smart meter. It has to be a smart meter with a solar panel. So that is an issue that needs to be addressed. A lot of the things I'm going to raise now are issues that have to be addressed at the federal and regulatory levels. And the other issue is harmonics from when it transitions from the solar power into electricity that you can use. So some people use filters, and that is an ever-changing issue that I don't have the most up-to-date information on, but people who I know who work on this issue who have solar panels have special filters that they've gotten in order to deal with the harmonics, which basically means the electricity in the home. Dirty electricity is another word that's often used.
Joe, would you like to ask a question, or where are you from?
Yeah, hi. I'm from Huntington, Long Island. I had an issue with PSEG. I happened to be working from home, and I just happened to see them pull out my analog meter. I caught them, and the worker was incredibly disrespectful to me. I luckily opted out, and I was on record as opt out. So after getting into a minor altercation with the worker, I was able to have them turn around by contacting his manager. They researched that I opted out. So the moral of the story is they put it back, the old one back. But honestly, if I wasn't home, I think it would have been a lost cause. You need to opt out. Everybody needs to have that on record. If you have an analog, it's incredibly important to go on record that you're opted out. And you have a fighting chance when they come in because I think they just do it, without even looking at the records and do that kind of thing.
That's very important. And also, if you want to opt out of your meter and you call up your company, I've heard from many, many people where they're told, oh, you can't do that, or they're told wrong information. So you call them up and say, just like you said, I'm calling to opt out of a smart meter. and I want an analog meter. And they're going to come up with a lot of things, and you just have to just keep saying that's what I want, and not get sidetracked by whatever they do. And I'm sorry to hear that. So go outside. If you find out, what kind of meter do you have? An analog meter looks very different than a smart meter, and smart meters will have an FCC ID on them as well. And they'll have these little round things. We have pictures on our site. I have a page on smart meters, which I will send you the link to as well, so you can see what one looks like. I'm putting that in the chat right now.
Okay. Cheryl, would you like to ask a question? And where are you from?
Yes, thank you, Stephen. I'm from Santa Rosa, California. Hi, Theodora. Thank you for sharing all your extensive knowledge on this. And my question is, I've read and heard that putting a salt lamp next to my device will counter or reduce the emissions. Is there any truth to that?
You know, I don't know the answer to that.
Thank
I know
you.
that there can be changes from things that are in the environment, and that, but I actually don't. That's not my area of knowledge.
Okay, thank you anyway.
Barbara, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, thank you for your wonderful information. There was so much I didn't know. I was wondering, you had mentioned about earbuds, and I was wondering, what about modern hearing aids? Do they emit wireless radiation? And if so, is there anything that we can do about it? And also, I guess the Apple Watch that my sister gave me is probably emitting radiation, right? So two
Yeah.
questions.
The Apple Watch is emitting radiation.
Yeah, I thought.
And with, you know, ears, they're all different
Mhm.
as to what, because there's also systems where you might have the thing that's here. Sometimes it's the there's like another device that can be out there that is the one that's emitting, and this is simply a receiver. So I can't speak to all hearing aids actually.
I see.
But
Would a meter help if you had a meter and then you could like put it near you and see if it's
I think so. If you were in with something like I would imagine with, because a lot of times there are things that are simply receivers rather
Mhm.
than emanating all the time. They're receiving what's coming out and amplifying it for you.
Mhm.
And if you have a lot going on, you know, if I step outside and I tried to meter something that's very sensitive, I wouldn't be able to know. I gotta tell you. So, but I still recommend a meter. So I don't know. I've actually never measured one. That is an
Now this
area that we're thinking we need to address.
Oh, okay. This has to do with a family member, and they recently got a hearing aid. One of them got one, and one of them got two. And I think that I think it may be that the cell phone might be the emitting of the radiation, and it is possible that the hearing aids are just a receiver. I guess you could inquire from the company. I don't know whether they'd give you the whole story, though.
That's right. That's what we end up doing, be it your hearing aid, being it your washing machine, whatever you have, you end up needing to do get your make, model, and call up the manufacturer and ask, are there any transmitting antennas? If so, what are they transmitting, and where do I find that information? And that'll get you going on that.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Monty, would you like to ask a question, or where are you from?
Yeah, from Ontario, Canada. So I just recently got a CPAP machine, and to my surprise, I was told call one day from one of the agents to tell me that they noticed I have not been using the machine certain times of the week. So I was wondering how they got the information. So does this thing have any transmitter installed on it that can cause any form of radiation? How do they know that I'm using it or when I'm not using it?
That's a very good question. And actually the new CPAP, those new machines, if they are wireless, do transmit. And They didn't always, but now a lot of them do. And sometimes they're regularly transmitting back to, they go through the cell phone or through the router, and somehow they're making it through the doctors. So obviously that needs to be a conversation with your doctor about what's appropriate for you. But I'll tell you a story of a woman who calls me up, same story. She says, what do I do? You know, I don't want this all the time on me. So she ended up working it out with her doctor, you know, patient doctor relationship, where the doctor said, I don't need this information every day. So you can, it gathers, and then she has a time when it goes to them. And she was able to find out how to put that particular one actually on airplane mode. Now, I don't know the one that you have. I'm going to put in the chat a link to, oh gosh, I hope we have this all online, because we're doing
This one is called ARI series, ARI series.
ARI what?
Series, SERIES.
Oh, ARI series. If
sorry,
you have a manual,
Sorry, Air Series 2.
oh, Air Series 2.
Yes.
One thing I would say this, you can unplug it when you're not using it. That's like step one, because I have not measured one myself to know if it's emitting all the time or what, but if you're not using it, it doesn't need to be plugged in. And I'm going to send you a page that I think might have an example of the fine print warning on one. If you go to the manual, you want to get the manual and see if there's a way to turn it on airplane mode. But again, talk to your doctor to make sure there's not a medical reason that they need that data all the time. So what she ended up doing was that she did it once a week. She'd turn it on once a week. It would transmit the data to her doctor. And just looking to see if I have it in mind, the kind you said, Air series. You know, I don't have it up right now. So search the make and model to get the kind to even see if it's emitting. And for those of you who are talking to your medical doctors about it, and your medical doctors are saying that this isn't true or whatever they're saying, there's a EMF medical conference, EMF medical conference 2021, where they can get educated. They can get continuing credits, medical credits for physicians and for health professionals. Also, if you're a nutritionist or any kind of a health professional, and you can get trained on it, because a lot of doctors aren't aware of this issue. I see. So Monty Thomas said it's ResMed. ResMed. And I don't have that one on my site. I realize we haven't updated with our medical things yet, but I'm going to write that down, ResMed. But look up the make and model and look up the user manual and see if it, when you look up the make and model and the user model, then you search within it to see if it's, search the word FCC. And if it says this emits radio frequency radiation, then it's emitting radio frequency radiation. I know that what this woman told me with her machine is that the doctor only needed it once a day. So she could turn it on airplane mode, and you might be able to turn on airplane mode and have it only transmit once a day, or whatever is what you work out with your doctor.
And this need to turn off the Wi-Fi completely off your modem. But then you can use IPTV, right? Because it runs on Wi-Fi. You can't use Google
So there are a couple other devices. I'm going to put a link in the chat right now, actually. And that is our fine print warning page. And on that page, we have a lot of devices, even swim goggles that are wireless. And then we also have the statement that most of you are not told exists, the instructions in the manual of the device, which say to keep it at a distance. So every cell phone has a fine print warning saying it has to be several millimeters from your body. It should not be touching your body. You shouldn't be holding it up. Shoot, I don't have one to show you, but I have an old cell phone. But you know, don't, of course, this isn't a smartphone, but don't hold it up to your chest to text. Teach your kids and your grandkids not to do that. There's research that has found breast cancer in women who have put that phone in their bra or who use the phone close to their breasts. And every device like a Wi-Fi router has 20 centimeters. Wi-Fi printer, 20 centimeters, that they say it should be away from your body because they don't test the device for compliance with FCC limits close to the body. They actually use a distance. Steve's not here, but I could answer. I could ask.
Oh, no, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Okay,
Yeah,
I was going to
okay.
do another question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Janet, would you like to ask a question, and where are you from?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm from Canada, Ontario. I just had a question. I just realized that I sit with my laptop on my lap quite a bit because I work from home, and that's probably not good. I noticed you said that you can use an Ethernet. So then how does that work? Like if you have a few people in the house, do you have to connect that Ethernet then to one place and then it runs through the house, or how does it work?
Yes, so this is a fixable situation. Every house is different. We've had 6 people on computers, all wired, and I'll show you a few things. So first you have to go to find out where is the internet coming from. Do you have a router or a modem or something in your home? And you can, it's actually a little more complicated than what I'm about to tell you, but just in short, you want to be able to plug an Ethernet into your modem. And then the other end goes into your computer. Don't use it on the lap because you're going to get the magnetic frequencies into your lap, even if you are fully wired. We ended up running, I've lived in many homes with this issue, and we've had many situations. And we've run Ethernet, you know, we tack it on the wall so you don't trip on it, obviously. And you can, this is a switch. So it's kind of like a splitter, but don't say that to an IT person. They'll get very upset with you if you use the word splitter. But it is a switch, and you can put an Ethernet, you put the main line in one, and then you can plug as many Ethernets into the other lines, and it will allow many people to use the internet. And it's super fast and works great once you get it hooked up. And for some of those of you who are like, "Ooh, that sounds, whoa," like that's how I felt for the first 6 months. I was like, "Oh, I'm not doing that." That's just like, whoa, how do you even do that? I'd die without my Wi-Fi. But then we took the time to set it up, and it's been great. No problems. I wish I had done it sooner. So you can do that. We have on our webpage under technology facts, if you go to wired to wireless, we have how to do that with details. And you might need to, like we ended up in the most recent home we live in, we had an electrician actually put the Ethernet in the wall so that we plug into the wall, just like the old cable lines, you know, but we have Ethernet now running so that we can do it more easily. And in the old house, we had it just along the floorboards, and we had it tacked along the kickboard, I guess it would be called. We put it in. So.
Okay, so I apologize to the people who we didn't get to their questions. We've had Theodora here for 2.5 hours straight by herself. So I think we've gotten a lot of information from her, which we appreciate. Theodora, for people that want to follow up with you, with Environmental Health Trust, that want to make donations, that want to get your information, again, what's the best way to stay connected to you and involved with you?
You can go to ehtrust.org, info at ehtrust.org to contact us. We do talks. We can talk to your community. You can donate to us. You can learn more about how to get involved with all of these issues. And if you have elected officials who you want to reach, if you are working on ordinance, we have lists of more protective ordinances and how you can get involved. So it's all there. Please contact us. And if you do want to do a talk or anything like that, we love to talk to parents and environmental groups or people who are working on health issues, talks to your community if you're having a cell tower proposed, or if you're working on an ordinance, all of those things. And please go to our YouTube channel as well to learn more. And I'll be talking tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock in the morning, I think.
Okay, so we are really grateful to you for all this time you gave us tonight and all the years of your life that you've devoted to this issue and that you're supporting us and fighting for all of us. A lot of us, I don't want to take Theodora for granted. We go to sleep at night. She's writing letters. She's fighting for our rights. She's not doing this for some personal reason. She's not getting rich from this. She has decided to fight for us, and I'm very grateful to her. So if we could unmute her and mute the audience so we could all thank her for tonight.
Thank you, Theodora.
Thank you so much.